All right, testing. Okay, everybody, if you may want to get to your seats. So good to have a great crowd today, and this is a great day of celebration. And we've got a real treat today, and a dear friend to so many, and a part of the family of so many. It's a privilege to have Al come and share with us today, and so many new faces here today, and Andy and Alice Holt, so great to have you here. Give them a hand. They just have not been able to be here. But Andy said, I want to see Al. So again, it's just a privilege, and so I'm going to turn it over to him. And I think he's got till 6 o'clock. He's got handbell choir tonight. And so he's going to do his thing. And y'all, if you got to go to the restroom, just come back and get the second verse, okay?
You don't have to worry about anything because handbells is not at 6 o'clock. It's at 6:30. So I have an extra 30 minutes there than more than you expect. Well, I appreciate the invitation to be allowed to sing for you all. It's been a pleasure running this sound and hearing all the different speakers and singers and musicians you have come through here. It's a blessing. And I brag on our Joy Club all the time to folks when I come across folks that are, looking for, a church that has some ministry involved with senior adults. And I said, well, we have a great one. And they have a blast. They have a good time at everything they do. So I brag on you quite a bit. And it's a pleasure to get to be with you all today. Some of you may have heard that I'm going to be retiring. Yeah, you may have heard that. And so come September the 8th, that'll be my last Sunday here at Ridgecrest. I've been here 36 years and 8 months. And looking forward to a little break. Do a little fishing here and there, right? But, it is a real blessing to have been able to be at the same church for 36 years. My kids grew up as a minister's kid in the same church. They never had to change churches every 18 months. Do you know what the average expectancy is for a minister of music in a Southern Baptist church? 18 months. Can you imagine that? Every 18 months changing ministers of music? Well, unfortunately, that's been the case over the years. So I have been extremely blessed for the Lord to bring me to Ridgecrest and let me stay here and let my kids grow up here. And not only does my family feel like they've had one major church, but I feel like I've had one major family. And they feel like all of our church members are our family, and we stay in touch that way. Well, today I wanted to share with you some of my stories. People say, you're really good at telling stories. Well, I'm going to share with you some stories. And if you're in the choir or if you're in my Sunday school class, you've heard some of these stories several times, many times. You could probably tell them yourself, right? I know. But I'll tell some of these stories, and hopefully they'll make some sense. People are always curious about ministers and ministers' lives. What are ministers' lives really like? Well, we go home and we put our halo on, and we get better reception on the TV that way. No, we don't wear halos, We're just like normal people, but people are always curious that ministers' lives are a little bit differently. Well, they might be a little bit differently, and I'm going to share with you some of those experiences. Ministers, some of them just have to be a little bit crazy. You got to be a little bit crazy to just kind of deal with some of the stress and some of the stuff that goes on. And so some ministers are a little bit crazy, and they do some funny things. And I worked with one for many, many years. His name was Don Chastain. And he was a little crazy. And I found that out because I graduated college in 1980 and met Don Chastain 3 weeks later and began to work with him in Morristown, Tennessee at the first church we worked together. And then he went one direction and I went another. And then the Lord called us both back here to Ridgecrest, where we worked together for about 25 years together. So I've known him a long time. Well, Don Chastain's just a little bit crazy. Let me tell you some of the things that to give you an example. There at our church in Morristown, Tennessee, we were 30 miles from Knoxville. And one Sunday morning, we got word that one of our deacons that morning had had a heart attack and had to be taken to Baptist Hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so the pastor went to the associate pastor, education minister, whose name was Mike Moody. He says, Mike, you want to go with me to the hospital in Knoxville? We're going to Baptist Hospital right after church is over this morning to see this deacon. And he says, yeah, I'll go with you. Well, as it happens, that particular morning, they both happened to wear their black suits, the ones we wear for weddings or for funerals, but they wore their black suits. They just happened to land that way that day. So they get in the car, they drive 30 miles to the hospital, and they get in there, and by the time they get there, after church, it's 1 o'clock, and so they get there, and they're about to go into they're standing there at the elevator, but at 1 o'clock, the employees of the hospital have finished lunch, and they're down in the basement finishing up their lunch, and they're leaving the cafeteria, getting on the elevators, going back to their various floors to go back to work. The doors open on the first floor, and the elevator is just full. It's just full of employees and people. But they saw these two dignified men in their black suits, and they made room for them. And so everybody squished back a little bit, and they step on the elevator, and the doors close. And they reached over to touch the buttons, and they realized every single button has been pushed because all these people are going back to their various floors. And so that little awkward, quiet moment when everybody's squished up against each other. And Don Chastain, I could always tell when he was about to do something crazy because he would do this. Some of y'all ever seen him do that? When he would raise up on his toes, get ready. He's about to make a left turn here and do something weird. And he starts to sing, Undertaker, Undertaker, won't you please drive slow? For that body you're a-taking is my mother, and I love her so. The doors opened on the second floor, and everybody got off. Got to be just a little bit crazy. When he and I were together in a car, that was the next worst thing in the world because stuff happened to us in a car. I don't know why. So he came to Ridgecrest in August of 87. I came in January of 88. And our first funeral together was a precious lady here named Maxine Coleman. And she had fought long and hard against cancer and lost that battle. But she was a precious lady, very precious. And so we did her funeral. And in every city and state, they do things differently. The funeral home just do things differently, and the community does things differently. And you kind of have to learn how do they do things here versus how do they do things there. Well, we go out to get in our car, and he said, "You're going to ride with me to the cemetery?" And I said, "Yeah." So I get in the car with him. He's going to speak a little bit. I'm going to sing Amazing Grace at the graveside. So we get in the car, and the funeral home director was Eddie Clements. You may know Eddie from Clements Funeral Home. So Eddie comes up to the window, and he says, "Now, Pastor, we're going to be going to Woodlawn Funeral Home, Cemetery, Woodlawn Cemetery." And he says, but you're going to lead the procession. And he said, well, wait a minute. I'm new here. I don't know where the cemetery is. And he said, well, just follow the policeman. I said, well, okay. So in a few moments, the policeman comes over and says, "Now, Pastor," I said, "you're going to be going to we're going to be going to the cemetery. You're going to lead the way, and you're going to go out first. Directly behind you will be the hearse. Behind them, the family and the procession." Okay. He said, "Well, you need to know, I do not know my way to the cemetery because I'm new here in town. He says, oh, okay. Just follow me. Okay. So we get started, and we go out of the parking lot, and we're going down Roxborough Road, no problem. What he didn't tell us was that when he got to the city limits, he was handing us off to a city patrolman. So all of a sudden, he's standing there with his hat over his heart, and we're driving by him going, and so the city policeman's on a motorcycle, and he goes, and he zooms down into the next red light, stops traffic, and we go past him. And then he holds it until we start the procession through. So as we're driving past him down Roxborough Road, we decided, we need to tell him we don't know our way to the grave, the cemetery. So Brother Don rolls the window down. He goes, we don't know where the cemetery is. The man is sitting on a motorcycle. He's got a helmet on. And he's going, he just shook his head at us. So we wrote, he said, do you think you heard us? I said, I don't think he heard you. We drive, we're just going slowly down. Here he comes. He drives right past us to the next red light, stops traffic. Tell him again. Okay. We don't know where the cemetery is. Just shakes his head and nods at us like we're fans of his or something. I don't know. And, he said, do you think you heard? I said, I don't know. So in just a moment, he's coming back past Brother Don, but now he's headed to the next red light. So he's really flying, and Brother Don goes, we don't know where we're going. So we're coming up at the Duke Street, Roxborough fork in the road, and we're starting to sweat it. But fortunately, the cop goes to that red light ahead of us and stops, and so, okay, we're going down Roxborough Road. We're not going to go down Duke Street. So we're going down Roxborough Road. We're still yelling at this policeman who thinks we are bananas. And we get to just before Avondale, the red light at Club Boulevard. He's at Club Boulevard stopping everybody and sending us through. And we're yelling at him. We don't know where we're going. We get to the fork in the road, the next red light, which is just a little short block, and there you are. And Brother Don says, which way should we go? And I said, well, it's like this, preacher. You got a 50-50 chance. Just pick one. I said, okay. So we're just going to go straight. I said, okay. So he stayed straight, and the hearse stopped behind us. And we looked back, and he said, they're not coming. I said, oh, no. I said, we have made a mistake. Well, that's when the cop pulls up and stops, and Eddie's going. Eddie Clement's driving the hearse. He's waving the cop down and goes. So the cop goes, now the cop has figured out they don't know where the cemetery is. And he drives past us. And in that very professional police tone, he goes, follow me. Well, then he led us through all the back alleys of East Durham. I mean, there were little barefoot kids out in the dirt playing out in the yard watching the parade of hearses and limousines, and it was hysterical. So anytime we're together in the car, it's a little bit dangerous. You got to be a little bit crazy to survive being a minister. Another thing you need to understand about being a minister is people are always watching you. No matter what you do, and people are always watching you. You never realize it, but they're always watching everything you do. Even your own kids. We were in Atlanta, Georgia one summer on our way to a vacation, and my oldest child was sitting in her little seat behind us, all strapped in, just a little thing. And it starts pouring one of those thunderstorms, and I mean, it is hammering rain. It is so heavy, and you can't see 20 feet in front of you, but it's 8 lanes of interstate in Atlanta, in right downtown area of Atlanta, and these cars are whipping in front of me and darting in front of me and going this way and zigging, and I'm like, they are scaring me to death. And I didn't realize that in the back seat, my own child was watching and listening. And she says, Daddy, And I said, yes. And she says, how do you know which ones are the idiots? People are always watching. They're always watching you. We lived in the house, we lived for a while in the house across the street from the Arrowhead Bed and Breakfast Inn on Mason Road in Roxborough. You know, right there on the corner. Our house was directly across the street, but on the very corner there. And behind us, facing Roxborough Road, was Mickey and Peggy Smith. Some of y'all may remember them. And so our backyard faced Mickey and Peggy Smith's side house and backyard. And Mickey Smith just loved Casey, my little son, to death. And my son thought the world of Mickey because he was like the grandfather that was in the neighborhood, you know. But we had this nice little trampoline in the backyard. And my little son, one Christmas, was given by his grandparents a pair of cowboy boots. And he would not give up them cowboy boots, not even in the heat of the summer. So he'd get his little cowboy boots on and his little shorts on and no shirt on. He'd get out there and climb up on that trampoline, jump up and down on that trampoline, have just a blast. It's this little fella jumping up and down. And I get a phone call from Peggy Smith. And she says, Al, you might need to have a talk with Casey. And I said, what's the matter? What about it? She goes, well, he ought not be standing on the trampoline, peeing off the trampoline in the yard. Because the whole neighborhood can see him because your house is on the back and we're all backed up. And people are always watching you. I had this terrible, terrible head cold one time, and Jeannie and I had gone to the beach to kind of enjoy a weekend away. It was it was an anniversary. We were going to go together for our anniversary. So we go to the beach, but I'm sick. I mean, I feel terrible. Can't breathe, and if you can't breathe at night and you can't sleep because you can't breathe, it's just miserable. Well, some of my choir members who are always very helpful said, you need to get you some rock and rye. Now, if you don't know what rock and rye is, it's rock candy, old-fashioned rock candy dissolved and mixed into rye whiskey. And it is a very effective old homemade remedy. And, and they said, you need to get you some rock and rye. And I'm telling you, you take that before you go to bed and you'll sleep good and you can breathe and you'll feel better the next day. So we get to the beach and I said, we passed an ABC store up the road there, and ain't nobody there knows me, so I'm going to sneak up there. I'm going to sneak up there and see if I can't get me a little whatever this rock and rye stuff is and see if it won't help me. She said, well, okay. So I go up there to the store. I look in the parking lot. There's only one car. I said, well, good. That's probably the guy that's working there. So I go in, and I'm looking around. There ain't nobody in there. But the guy behind the counter sees me. And as soon as he sees me, he puts on this big smile. And he says, hey, how are you? And I said, well, I'm fine, thank you. Well, can I help you find something? And he was just it was like suddenly he was so happy. And I'm like, certainly he's not that happy to see somebody come in the store. And I said, well, sir, he said, can I help you find something? I said, yeah. He goes, I figured you were looking for something. What do you need? And I said, well, I've got a bad cold, and I need this stuff called rock and rye. Do you know what that is? He goes, oh, yeah, we keep it right here behind the counter. He pulled out this little bottle of this stuff and put it on the counter, and I paid for it. And he said, well, you have a good day. And I said, okay, and I left. And I thought, well, I got out of there, and nobody from my church saw me in the liquor store. So I don't have to have a telephone campaign talking about the music director, So I get back to the house where we're staying, and I come in the door, and my wife says, well, did you get it? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, do you think anybody recognized you? I said, no. And she says, I think you're wrong. I said, what do you mean? She says, look at your shirt. And I'm wearing my Ridgecrest Baptist Church staff. That's why he was so happy to see me. People are always watching you. But one of the things I have learned is that no matter where God tells you to go, He's going to provide for you. He's going to take care of you no matter what. And I learned it along with some other people. I mean, I saw God provide for other people. I told you when Don Chastain and I were in a car together, that was bad news. Well, we were in his little orange Chevette. He had this little burnt orange Chevette when I first met him. And of course, you know, he's a big Clemson fan, so orange was his favorite color. And so he had this little burnt orange Chevette. And we have driven the 30 miles to the hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we've made visits, and we're leaving. Well, if any of you know anything about Knoxville, Tennessee, that's where Interstate 40 runs straight through it, but then also Interstate 75 goes through it, and they crisscross, and for a while they're on the same road. And it has always been heavily, heavily congested, and it's named by the truckers as Malfunction Junction because it's always a log jam for them. Well, we're right at Malfunction Junction, and they built this interstate after the city had long been established, so they put all of the interstate on pillars way up in the air. So you're way up in the air looking over the city as you drive through the city. So we're driving along, and there's no shoulders because there's an embankment. I mean, just a concrete wall right there. There is nowhere to go. And the timing chain, those of you who know what a timing chain is, broke on his little Chevette. What that means is we're immediately stuck. It just shuts off. That's it. Stop. And we're coasting, and we're coming to a coasting stop. There's nowhere to turn, nowhere to get away, nothing. And he said, what do you think's happened? I said, I think your timing chain broke. He goes, you think you can fix it? I said, not in this lifetime. He goes, what are we going to do? I said, well, we're going to have to get out of here because this is before cell phones. I said, we're going to have to get out of here and get off this interstate somehow and call a tow truck. And he looked in his rearview mirror and he started laughing. Guess what pulled up behind us? A tow truck. How'd you know? And the guy in the tow truck gets out and comes walking up there and says, having a car problem? We said, yes, boy, are you perfect timing. He says, well, it's a little difficult because I can't get around in front of you to hook you up and tow you someplace. He says, but I'll push you off the next entrance ramp, and then we can get off the road, and if you need to go somewhere, I'll tell you. He said, where would you want me to take you? And he says, well, Brother Don said, I don't know how far it is, but you need to take me to the nearest Chevrolet repair place. And he said, look over the wall. Chevrolet dealership right there. And the funniest thing was, he said, I got to go to another call. He says, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to push you, and right over this little hill is the exit ramp, but the exit ramp will take you right to the car dealership. But I'm going to push you fast enough to get you off the exit ramp, and I'm going to keep going. And he did, and here we go, rolling down this big circle, and I kid you not, the light turned green. And we rolled straight, no power, rolled straight across the intersection into the dealership, right up to the front door into a parking spot. God provides. He takes care of us. He watches out for us. When I was in college, I drove a 1966 Volkswagen Beetle. And I drove it from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I lived, to Chicago, Illinois, for school. I went to school at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. It was a 10-hour drive in that 66 VW Beetle. And 2 years in a row, they had a horrible blizzard move in the weekend, of Thanksgiving weekend. And I had to drive through that blizzard to get back to school. And I got just outside, just before you get into Indianapolis, Indiana. and the snow was unbelievable. It was already like 6, 7 inches deep, and the roads were packing down, and you couldn't see the edges of the road anymore. And all of a sudden, my car starts acting weird, and it had broken a push rod. So one of the valves wasn't working, and it's hiccuping and spitting, and it's a Volkswagen to begin with. It was hiccuping and spitting when I got it. But anyway, so I had to pull off, and the nearest exit that I saw there kind of looked weird, but I pulled off, and come to find out they had redone the entrance ramp to this road that I was pulling off toward, and the exit ramp dumps you out into a big parking lot, which is now a big park and ride. So I pulled over there, and I looked across the street at the service station. So I walk over to the service station. I tell the guy, I said, "Can I borrow your phone book? I need to call a taxi cab." He said, "Okay." I call a taxi cab. I have to wait about 15 minutes on a cab to come out to where I'm at. And he says, "Where do you need to go?" I said, "Well, first I need to go get my luggage out of my car." So he drove me over there to get the luggage. We load up all of the luggage out of my Volkswagen going back to Chicago. Get in his car, and he says, "Now, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I need to get to the nearest bus station to get a bus to go back to Chicago." And he said, "You're kidding." I said, "No." And he went, "It was next door to the gas station." The bus station was next door to the gas station. God provides for his people. Gene and I came to Durham, and we lived just up down the road from Barbara and Bernie Berry on Tracy Trail up here in Eden Lakes. And we had this old 76 Cutlass Salon, Oldsmobile. And the transmission started going out on it. And I said, "Well, it's the only car we got. We got to have this car working." But years ago, we had given that car to the Lord. We said, "Lord, this car is yours, so you got to keep it running for us, okay? We're giving it to you. It's your problem." So I had a talk with God. I said, "God, your car is broken, and you got to get it fixed." And I found out, I took it to a mechanic. He said it's going to cost $638 to fix this transmission. And I told the Lord, I said, "I don't have $638. I don't have $638 to fix this transmission." So within that week, I get one of those scary letters from the IRS. And I'm thinking, "Oh, no, what is this about?" And I kid you not, I opened the letter, and this is what it said. "We have reviewed your tax return from 5 years ago, and you overpaid. And here is your refund of $638. Does God provide? That's how God provides. He provides for his own. We don't need to doubt. We don't need to worry, because his eye is always on his little sparrows. The chimes of time ring out the news, another day is through. Someone slipped and fell. Was that someone you? You may have longed for added strength, your courage to renew. Do not be disheartened, for I bring hope to you. It is no secret what God can do, what he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion and my constant friend is He, for His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me, for His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. And I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For His eye is on that little sparrow, and I know He watches me. Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise, for it was grace that bought my liberty. I do not know just why He came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. I shall forever lift mine eyes to Calvary, to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous the grace that caught my falling soul. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. One of the things we've all learned, but you learn this in ministry too, is that things are not always as they appear. Things are not always as they seem to be. You know, I learned as a young child that things aren't always what I expected them to be. My parents moved across town into a new neighborhood when I was 9 years old. Moved to a new neighborhood, but they moved the very last day of school. So I'm going into the summer to a new neighborhood where I don't know anybody in a different school district, you know. So it was a lonely summer. And the little boy that lived next door was about a year or two older than me, and his name was Bruce. And so I hung out with Bruce. And one day, after we had ridden bikes till we were tired of bikes, and we'd hike through the woods until we were tired of hiking through the woods, Bruce said, "Let's go see Miss Debbie." And I said, "Who?" He said, "Miss Debbie." I said, Who is Miss Debbie?" He said, "You know Miss Debbie." I said, "No, I do not know Miss Debbie. Who is Miss Debbie?" He goes, "Little Debbie's." I said, I know Little Debbie's. What about little? He says, "You know the little girl on the package, the little Debbie." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "She lives behind us on that street over there." I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No." He said, "We're going to go over there." And I thought, that's kind of weird. Why would he? He says, "No, we're going to go over and see Miss Debbie." So he drags me through the woods. We come out on the other side. We go around to the front door, and we knock on the door. I'm so excited because I'm going to meet Miss Debbie. And she's going to open the door, and there's going to be this little girl with pigtails and this little straw hat, you know. And this old lady opens the door. And Bruce says, "Hi, Miss Debbie." And I went, that does not look like Miss Debbie. Things are not always the way they seem. You know, what I thought it was going to be was not what it was going to be. This is little Miss Debbie all grown up. And for those of you who may not bother to read all of the fine print on every little Debbie package, you'll find that they are manufactured from a place called Collegedale, Tennessee, which is just down the road from where we were living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Collegedale. And that's where they got their start, and that's where they were. Well, she had grown up and was living in Chattanooga now with her family. And but Bruce had obviously met her in the past because there was a connection that immediately picked up. And she said, "Hey, Bruce, who's your friend?" And he said, "Well, this is my new neighbor, Al." And she said, "Well, hey, Al, it's nice to meet you." And she says, "Here, boys." And she turned, and she handed us each a box of Little Debbie Swiss chocolate cake rolls. This was the next best thing to Santa Claus. And I said, "Thank you." And so she closed the door, and we started to leave. And I said to Bruce, I said, "My mama is going to be so shocked when I go home with these." And Bruce said, "Oh, no, 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 you can't take them home." He says, "If you take them home and your mama finds out that Miss Debbie gives us Little Debbie's every time we go to her house, she won't let us go back there. So we got to eat these." So he took me to his private place in the woods where he would sit down and eat Little Debbie's. The ground was covered in wrappers and boxes. And so I started trying to eat Swiss cake rolls as fast as I could and learned that it's not a wise thing to do that. You know, I couldn't eat them all. I still took half of them home. But Miss Debbie was not what I expected her to be. Things are not always what you expect sometimes, you know. My mom called me one day, and this is when we were living in Morristown, Tennessee there, and we had a big snow come, and the temperature dropped really low. And this is right here at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, and temperature dropped real low, and their hot water pipe froze going to their master bathroom. And so Mom calls me, and she says, "Can you come over and climb under the house and fix and thaw out this hot water so I can take a shower?" And I said, "Well, okay." So I get over there, and I got me an extension cord and a trouble light in one hand and a hair dryer in the other, you know, and a flashlight. And I climb underneath their house, and I get underneath it. Well, I noticed that my dad had left all those little air vents underneath the foundation. He had left those open and forgotten to go around and close all those at the beginning of the winter. And one was right beside the water pipe. So when I saw all of these, the sun coming through all these little vents, I thought, how far have I got to go around this house closing all the, you know, how many of these? So I climb in a little further, and I put my hand like this on a one of those pillars, block pillars holding up the house. And I'm looking to see what's there, and I got this hair dryer in the other hand. And I said, okay, well, I got to go. I'll close all the water pipe's right over there. So I go to turn, and I'm down low. And, you know, underneath the house, you can't stand up. You know, you're like maybe, and it was like one of these where you had to, I was like this, you know, walking like a troll or something, trying to see what's going on in the house. So I get ready to move away from that pillar, and I do this, and right here is a skunk. Laying up against that pillar, sound asleep, is a skunk. And my brain tried to take charge. My brain said, okay, it's asleep. It's wintertime. It's hibernating. Don't wake it up. And my body said, "Ah!" And my brain said, okay, you blew that. So now it's going to wake up, and you're going to get out here stinking. So my brain tried to help me out again, and it said, no matter what you do, don't try to stand up and run. because you're under a house. Do not try to stand up and run. But my body tried to stand up, and I'm going, oh, hitting my head on the floor joist as I'm trying to get out, and I'm still making a racket. And finally, I get the door, and I climb out the door, and I'm like, by now that thing has got to be awake. And I'm shining my light in there, looking at it from a distance, and it's not moved a bit. So I climb back in there, and I get closer and closer, and I look. It was dead. And it had been dead a number of years. But because it was under the house, it had kind of dried out, and the skin had just tightened around it, and it looked like it was alive. But when you look close, you notice it was like leg bones sticking out, you know. Things are not always as they seem. You know, things are not always as you think they are. You know, and people, one of the other things I learned in ministry is people don't always communicate real well. They don't always tell you everything you need to know. And communication is sometimes real important, real key to certain things. But I learned this a lot in my own family. My son, Casey, I guess he functions on the need to know basis, and he figures if you don't need to know, he won't tell you. You know, he likes to go fishing. So one Saturday morning, he gets up real early to go fishing. And he gets in his little Toyota pickup truck that it was my pickup truck, and I passed it on to him. You drive this. So it's one of those old little bitty pickup trucks. And he calls me at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, and I'm still in bed asleep. And he says, Dad, have you got another key to the Toyota truck? I said, yeah. He says, well, can you bring it to me? And I said, bring it to you? Where are you? He said, I'm on Red Mill Road. And I said, oh, you were going fishing? He said, yeah, but I need you to bring me the key. And I said, well, how can you be on Red Mill Road and need a key? Because there's nothing on Red Mill Road but, you know, houses and farmland. And he goes, well, I said, did you get locked out of your truck? He goes, no, it fell out. I said, what do you mean it fell out? Well, the key fell out of the ignition. I said, how did the key fall out of the ignition? He says, well, when it rolled over, the key fell out of the ignition. And I said, rolled over? Well, yeah. He said, well, not like all the way. It's just like on its side in the ditch. And I said, son, you don't need a key. You need a tow truck. And I said, I'll be there in a minute. So my wife is listening to half this conversation on the phone, you know, going, what has happened? I said, I don't know. He run off the road somehow, and he's laying in the ditch, and he wants me to come bring him a key because the key fell out. And he don't need a key. I'm going to go figure out what's going on. So just about the time I'm ready to go out the door, I got my shoes on, got my keys in my hand, I'm fixing to go out the door. My phone rings again. He says, Dad, it's okay, never mind. I said, what do you mean, never mind? The car is on the side of the road in the ditch. What do you mean? Oh, no, it's on the road now. It's okay. I said, how is that possible, son? He goes, well, you see, this truckload of Hispanics who were on their way to do some landscaping work today drove down the road, and they saw my truck on the side of the road and me standing out there, and they stopped, and they got out, and they said, you want us to push your truck back up on the road? And he said, yeah. And they all got together, and they pushed that little truck back up on the road. He goes, and the keys fell down in the floor. And I said, there's my keys. And I cranked it up, and it runs just fine. I said, son, you need to learn to go to the main point first. Don't trail me along all the way. My mother did the same thing. I think he inherited it from her. My mother moved to Durham after my father passed away, and she moved here, and she lived here for 16 years, and this was her church, and she loved it. And but my mother, she would die if to know that I'm telling you all that she smoked, and couldn't get away from smoking. But she was embarrassed for people to know that she smoked. Well, I go over to her house one day, and there's an e-cigarette. You know what an e-cigarette is? It's a little electric cigarettes that they made, and You put it in your mouth and you suck on it. When you do, the tip of it lights up blue. And then you pull it out and you blow out this. I guess it's the early, before they had vaping, they had these e-cigarettes. And I said, what is this on the counter? And it's in the kitchen. And she goes, oh, well, that's that one of them e-cigarettes. Your sister bought that for me thinking maybe, this will help me cut back on real cigarettes. But it don't work. It's broke. Well, I'm a fixer kind of guy. So the last thing you need to say is it's broke, because I'm going to try and figure out what's wrong with it. So I pick it up and I put it in my mouth. She's going, no, it's broke. And I put it in my mouth. I go, I suck on it. And all I got was little bits of water coming out of it into my mouth, little spatters of water. But the tip glowed blue. You could see it was working. And I said, well, it turned blue. But there's, I've seen them on TV where and then they blow out this little steam, but there was no steam coming out of it. And I said, well, she goes, it's broke, I tell you. And I said, well, and I tried it again. I still just get these little spatterings of water. It tastes kind of bad in my mouth. And I'm like, well, it's trying to work. But Mama says, I put it down. I told you it's broke. And I said, how do you know it's broke? She said, because I dropped it in the toilet. I said, Mama, you couldn't have led with that. You couldn't have said that first. People don't always communicate with you. But you know who else doesn't always communicate with you and tell you the whole story? God. God doesn't tell you the whole story. If he told us the whole story, we'd quit. Jesus kind of did. He said, if any man would follow after me, let him take up his lazy boy recliner and the TV remote and follow me. Did he say that? No. What did he say? Take up your cross. This is not going to be an easy path. This is going to be difficult. So don't expect it to be easy. But he didn't tell us anymore. He doesn't give us all the details. He doesn't communicate all of the ins and outs of it. But you know what he does tell us is, don't worry about those things that you don't know about, because I'm going to take care of you. Like I said, he's going to provide for us. He's going to take care of us. When Jeannie and I got married, just before we got married in 1980, she started having stomach problems, and she was a sick girl, and they diagnosed her with Crohn's disease. And we were about to get married. And we got married, and for the first 2 years of our marriage, she was sick all the time. I'd see her throw up food that was 3 days old. She was a miserable young lady, losing weight, getting smaller and smaller. And then the Lord called us to go serve in Miami, Florida, to a church in Miami. And so we moved an 18-hour drive away from our families all the way to Miami, Florida. And we got down there, and I said, well, the first thing we need to do is find a gastroenterologist and establish a relationship so that you are taken care of. So I picked up the Miami phone book, and the Miami phone book was this thick for the first half. The other half was that thick. It was enormous. And I turned to gastroenterologists, page after page after page of gastroenterologists in the Miami and greater Miami area. And I couldn't pronounce half of them's last names. So I went into, wait a minute, here's a guy, Rogers. I can pronounce Rogers. R.V. Rogers, okay. And I called R.V. Rogers' office, and the nurse answered, or the receptionist answered the phone. And I said, is Dr. Rogers taking any new patients? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, he is. And I went, why is she so happy about that? That sounded kind of weird. And she was like almost shocked that somebody would call and want to see the doctor. I mean, that was a weird response. And I said, well, My wife has Crohn's disease, and we've just moved down here to Miami this past month. But I want to establish a relationship with a gastroenterologist and have y'all contact her other doctor in Tennessee and get all of her records so that she don't have to go through all those other tests again. You can look and see what's going on and what she's being treated for and everything. So she said, well, okay, that's great. We'll schedule you an appointment. So we go in to see R.V. Rogers. First appointment. And the nurse takes us into the examining room, puts her file down on the table. The door comes open, in comes R.V. Rogers, and he says, don't tell me anything. Don't tell me anything. Let me just look at you. And he looked at her, and he says, from the looks of the swelling in your body, you're on some type of steroid, most likely prednisone. And she said, yeah. And he says, it looks like you've probably been on it about 2 years now. And she said, yeah, exactly, 2 years. And he said, let me see your fingernails. Let me see your hands. She held her hands out, and he looked at her fingernails, and he said, you have Crohn's disease. And she said, yeah. And he said, how old are you, honey? And she said, I'm 23. And he says, you want to have children? She said, yes. He said, well, you can't have children and be on prednisone. You got to get off of this. We got to fix this. And he pulled his card out of his pocket, turned it over, and he wrote on the back of it. And he said, this is my home phone number. You call me anytime you need me, day or night, and I will meet you at the hospital if you're sick. I will be here for you. And I have never seen a doctor do that anywhere. He just fell in love with her. He just thought the world of us and her, and he was going to fix this young lady. And so the next choir practice I have, my choir says, well, did you find a good gastroenterologist? And I said, yes. His name is R.V. Rogers. And the nurse that is in my choir said, you saw R.V. Rogers? Yeah. She said, he is the number 5 gastroenterologist in America. People come from all over the world to see R.V. Rogers. And you got an appointment with R.V. Rogers? So now I know why that receptionist was so surprised. And R.V. Rogers, within a month, she had a complete and total blockage in her stomach and had to go into the emergency room. And he came right out there, and he did an upper GI. And he comes in and he says, I want to show you this. And he starts showing us stuff on the X-ray that makes no sense to us. But he said, here's the thing. I've discovered exactly where your problem is, and we can bypass it and fix this once and for all. And he gave her a new experimental procedure that today is known as gastric bypass. He made her a new opening in her stomach and bypassed her old one. And our first child was born a year later. God provides. Sometimes he'll lead you to the wilderness and you think, why am I here? And it's because he has the greatest solution for you right there. He's going to provide for you. He's going to take care of you. Just follow me. I traveled down a lonely road, and no one seemed to care. The burden on my weary back had bowed me to despair. I oft complained to Jesus how folks were treating me, and then I heard him say so tenderly, my feet were also weary upon the Calvary road, and the cross became so heavy Just lift your cross and follow close to me. In the harvest fields now ripened, there's a work for all to do. Hark, the voice of God is calling, to the harvest calling you. Little is much when God is in it. Labor not for wealth or fame. There's a crown and you can win it if you'll go in Jesus' name. I would love to tell you what I think of Jesus, since I found in him a friend so strong and true. I would tell you how he changed my life completely. He did something that no other friend could do. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. There's no other friend so kind as he. No one else could take the sins and darkness from me. Oh, how much he cared for me. You know, it's okay to be a little crazy, and people are always watching, and things are not always as they seem, and God may not always communicate what he's really up to, but he'll always provide for you. From now until he comes again. And I believe that it's closer now than it has ever been. Do you? Amen. I need a little more up here. I hear the sound of a mighty rushing wind, and it's closer now than it's ever been. And I can almost hear the trumpet as Gabriel sounds the call at that midnight cry. We'll be going home. I look around me, I see prophecies fulfilling. I see the signs of the times, they're appearing everywhere, and I can almost hear the Father as he says, "Son, go get my children and bring them home at that midnight cry." Christ shall rise to meet him in the air. And then those that remain, we shall be quickly changed. We'll be changed in that moment, at that midnight cry. We'll be going home. I look around me and I see prophecies fulfilling, and I can see how the signs of the times, how they're appearing everywhere, and I can almost hear the Father as he says, "Son, go get my children and bring them home to me." At that midnight cry, the bride of Christ will rise when Jesus steps out on the clouds to call God's children. The dead in Christ will rise, and we'll meet him in the air. And then those that remain, oh, we shall be quickly changed. We'll be changed in that moment, at that midnight cry. Oh, at that midnight cry. Oh, at that midnight cry. When Jesus, when he steps out on the clouds to call God's children, all the dead in Christ will rise and meet him in the air. And then those that remain, oh, we shall be quickly changed. We'll be changed in that moment, at that midnight cry. At that midnight cry. At that midnight cry. We'll be going home. Going home. Thank you. Thank you very much. Shirley, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank y'all very much.
What can you say? Amen. You just have to bear with me a little bit. Wow. I have one regret that I haven't known Al the whole 36 years. But for 22 of them, I've known him, and I love him. He has been a friend. A mentor, a teacher, but he's family. I think of him as blood, as a brother. He likes to fish. Well, he's a fisherman of men. He hooked me from the very beginning, and I've never told him no, because everything he did was for the glory of God. Everything. I was a little disappointed at one time because he took out a restraining order on Mark and Shay and myself that we could not get anywhere near his choir. But then I realized it was for the glory of God. What a journey. And, this is a celebration of a life of serving God for he and Jean both. And they've touched this church in so many ways and so many things that many of you don't even know about behind the scenes. And yet we don't want to say goodbye, but we also celebrate what's next. And so, Al, if you would come back up here, please. There's not enough words to say and express, but I think a lot of his faces right now, I think there are tears of joy and happiness for what y'all mean to us. And to this ministry, the senior adult, but to the whole church, y'all are just very special. And we wish you the best. You will forever be in our hearts. There's no doubt about that. And I know that you're still going to be around. And but this is just something from the senior adult ministry, just to show our appreciation for all that you've meant to us. And it's represented here, other churches, your music ministry, but your church family, your classes. And we just want to show our expressed gratitude to you and Jean. And this is for you. And I hope that you can enjoy this with our hearts, knowing that that you have done a good work.
Well, thank you all. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Do I open it now?
Well, you can wait. You can wait.
Thank you all very much. It's my pleasure to have been able to be here these years. And I'm retiring. I'm not dead. I'll still be around, okay?
We know. And just thank you again. Once again, if you would. It's kind of hard to close out after this, and what a day! I hope you've enjoyed all of this today. I know hearing your laughter and all the conversation for lunch, and of course just the way we've been touched here, but it is a great reminder of our great God. In the chaos of the world, He provides for us. No matter what it looks like, what it seems, He knows the story. He knows, and He provides. And He's going with each one of us as we go, and we can count on Him. Is that not right? And as we take that away, just remember the midnight cry is coming. So thank you again for being here. We will be on our regular schedule now. We had July off, but just a reminder, September is in the evening, so don't come at lunch. We'll be doing a call, but Shepherd's Voice will be singing for us on that Tuesday night, the 17th, I believe. Don't excuse me, but anyway, that September will be in the evening, so that's coming up. And I just want to ask for prayers. Many of you know our dear friend Caleb Cates has been sick, battling for a long time. Well, he is near the end of life, and I had talked with Harriet a little bit before we had today, and actually Mark and I are going to go make a visit after we leave today. But just be praying for the family. We know Caleb's heart, and we know where he's going. And it's been a long, tough journey for the family. And be praying for Harriet and their son, David, daughter-in-law Paula, are actually out of town, coming back this Thursday. So don't know what's gonna happen. So just be praying for the family. What faithful servants. And I know that they know that they're loved, and I know that they feel the prayers and will continue to pray. So continue to pray for Caleb and Harriet and the family. And I do want to say hey and welcome Andy and Alice Holt. Dear friends, and Andy came in and he said, "I want to see Al." And again, we love you all and continue to pray. And glad you made and were able to make the effort to be here, and we continue to support you in every way too. So I want to close this, but before I close this in a word of prayer, as far as cleaning up today, we need to clear the tables. Just kind of push the chairs aside. You don't move them. We got to reset up. If we can just get the tables put up in the closet and leave the chairs out, and maybe it'll make it a little easier. Okay? Don't save the tablecloths. And it is September the 17th, Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, okay? So we get cleaned up. And again, remember the midnight cry. That's our hope. Jesus is coming, okay? Let me close this in a word of prayer. Father, we do thank you for today. Lord, every day is a gift from you. Every day is a life to glorify you. And Lord, pray that you would embolden us in what we say and in what we do brings glory to you. And Lord, what a great inspiration. Al, his stories just wove us together in the circumstances of life, how you are there and that you're always there, that you always meet the need, you always provide. And Lord, as we leave, that we remember that that's who you are to all of us who know and love you. And we thank you for the greatest gift, the love through your Son, Jesus Christ. And Father, through the gift of your Spirit, that wherever we go, we're never alone. We're never at odds with you, that we rely and completely, totally rely on you and your great provision. And so, Father, we are grateful now as we depart. We thank you for the opportunities that we'll have the rest of this week, and as you prepare us for our services this weekend, Lord, in our hearts and our minds, that our eyes of the heart, eyes of our mind, would see you in all that's going on and in all that we are directed to do and be a part of. Lord, we ask a special blessing now upon the Cates family. I pray for Caleb as he is struggling to sustain life. I pray for Harriet as she's been such a faithful caregiver. Lord, great servants of this church, and I pray that in this time of great need, Lord, you'll provide great peace. They know the hope, and Caleb is soon to realize the hope that we have. But Lord, I pray that they would know your presence and peace and safe travel for the family. And Lord, as we lift them up, that they feel the power of your presence, your supernatural presence in their circumstances now. Thank you again. Go with us as we leave in safety and in good health and in your care. In Jesus' name, amen.